Hello and welcome to Shapiro's Rooted in American Craft. I am Alena. I am usually here with my brother Matt, but he is out sick today, so I am flying solo. I'm really excited for this week's episode. I had a chance to sit down and interview one of my favorite jewelers, Sarah Graham, who's actually going to be here with us in person this weekend. I actually learned a lot about her that I didn't know, so definitely take a second and listen to it before you head down this weekend and see her. Sarah works in the oxidized cobalt chrome, 18 karat gold, diamond. She's got some tourmaline, sapphires, lots of texture in her work. It was a really cool interview to kind of learn more about how she got started. So I'm really looking forward to being able to share her story with all of you. I also just wanted to take a second and thank everyone that came out this past weekend for our Janet Sam's trunk show. Janet does the big wall pieces with recycled glass that she paints the backgrounds on and kind of arranges the glass to create beautiful images. And that interview we also had last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, I'd really encourage you to go check out her interview too. I learned a ton about her. There's so much more that goes into her work than I even realized. So that was a fun one to do. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I hope you enjoy my interview with Sarah Graham. Well, today's guest, we have the very talented Sarah Graham. Sarah is actually going to be here this weekend. So while you're listening, if you think of any other questions that you wished I would have asked and didn't, save them up and come and visit her this weekend so you can ask them yourself. So hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So who is Sarah? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you? What do you do?
Okay, so I live in Aspen, Colorado. Moved here about 10 years ago from San Francisco, so I'm a California girl, born and raised. Um, and I have a husband and I have a 14-year-old son who's going to be in high school next year. Um, and I started making jewelry about 32 years ago, really right out of college or while I was still in college. Um, and started, my first job was at a pawn shop that made jewelry. And I was just fascinated. And I asked the guy, I'll wash your windows if you teach me how to make jewelry. And it turned out he needed someone to work there. So I got a job. And this is while I was still in college down in San Diego in Ocean Beach. Um, and on my day off, I sat with their bench jeweler and just learned the basics. And I was hooked. I just loved it. So that's where I started.
Okay. Did you get any design inspiration while working at the pawn shop? I'm sure you saw tons of different styles of pieces come through. I mean, did that help, lead you to where you are now at all?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I think I was kind of thinking the other night that this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I don't care that much about jewelry, but I care about everything that goes into it. And so I guess that means I care about jewelry. But the pawn shop, like what I really love the most is the material and this idea of like making something and being able to make something. I think at that point in my life, I was young and I just took for granted, like there's a table, there's a chair, there's a ring. And this really like got me thinking like, wow, this actually, this chair starts with a piece of wood. And how do you get it from a tree to a plank to a whatever? And so, seeing how they could take like just molten gold and pour it and form it, it just fascinated me. And the different materials, the malleability of gold and the hardness of a diamond and all those kind of things really inspired me. So I think the designs, yeah, I mean, it was my first exposure to
Right.
jewelry. And so, looking back, none of it is really my style. But it did sort of get the gears turning as far as what could be done with these materials. But it was really when I started working, I got an apprenticeship in Carmel, California. So in between working at that pawn shop, I graduated from college, my boyfriend at the time, and then we got married, my husband, and I traveled around the world for about 2 years straight. And that's when I really decided this is what I want to do. I went to, I don't even know how many jewelry stores, but all over world. And gosh, talk about inspiration of seeing every different culture, from the ancient Egyptian, in the museums there, to Greece. I remember just being blown away by the jewelry in Greece. So that inspired me a lot. And then when we got back from our travels, I got this apprenticeship, and very traditional jewelry, but it was a great experience because I was able to learn the real basics about how to make jewelry. So, casting, cleaning, polishing, all that stuff. The end result was not at all my style. It was a lot of bling and very traditional. But during that time, I visited a jewelry store in another town up in Mendocino, which is where we ended up moving after this. And I saw this suite of jewelry at a jewelry store that was vintage, and it had been put in the store on consignment by a customer of theirs. Like, can you try and sell this for us? And it was black iron with
Okay.
platinum, diamonds, and pearls. And it was kind of a sort of vintage design, but the materials, the contrast, I mean, I was like blown away. And that from that moment, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with contrasting metals and black. I was just like, this is crazy and amazing and beautiful. Um, the problem was it had a little tag that marked it as the materials. It identified the black as anodized steel.
Okay.
um, so I went back to the guy who was teaching me, and I said, oh my god, I saw this jewelry and it's got anodized steel. And he was like, yeah, you can't anodize steel. And I was, well, you don't know what you're talking about. So meanwhile, after 2 years of that apprenticeship, we ended up moving up to Mendocino, and because there was a woodworking program, which is what my husband was doing at the time. And so I'd go visit that jewelry all the time. And meanwhile, asking everyone, how do you anodize steel? And, everyone kept giving me the same answer. So we did that for 2 years. And then we moved up to Portland, Oregon, where I started working for a trade shop, which is a jewelry shop that does repairs and special orders for all the stores around town. And so I was exposed to a lot of different jewelers, and I did continue to ask, how do you anodize steel? And everyone, I drove people crazy. I'm probably known still in Portland for that. But finally, one day, a guy said, look, you can't anodize steel. However, there's this company that does casting for the medical industry. Why don't you go talk to them? So I did, and they did like joints, like replacement, shoulder joints, that sort of thing. And they said, yeah, you can't anodize steel. We don't know anything about this, but, you're welcome to take some of these, like, mistake body parts home and see what you can do. And it turned out that one of them, cobalt chrome, turned black when I did some special treatment to it. And so that's where I came up with this black metal. And in hindsight, it's good, because had it been properly identified as iron, I probably would have made my jewelry with iron, which is fine, except that iron rusts. And because I didn't know that, and I was chasing this other idea, I ended up with cobalt chrome, which is hypoallergenic and stainless, which I think is, important, because it's not cheap. It's fine jewelry that's mixed with diamonds and gold. And so, it's nice to be able to tell my customers that.
Definitely, yeah. For those of you that aren't familiar with Sarah's work, the cobalt chrome that she's talking about, it's this really matte black finish to it, and it's so unusual and different than like oxidized sterling, which we sell a lot of as well. Do you know anyone else that works in that finish? I mean, you're the only person I've seen that uses that
Yeah,
metal in your jewelry.
so some of the like men's band, like Benchmark, they wedding bands, they do work in that
Okay,
cobalt chrome. They don't blacken it.
got it.
I do, every so often get a jeweler saying, how do you do this? And I give them the basics. I tell them the basic, which is we heat it and we quench it in a chlorine type solution. But that is not quite enough. That's enough to kind of get it black, but
Got
there's
it.
some other little trade secrets if you want to do it at scale and consistency, which we had to learn. Although I did have a lot of generous artists or jewelers around me who gave me little tidbits of information. But um, there is an amazing jeweler named Zoltan David, and he has done that, but he's a very sort of one of a kind. Has just you've probably heard of him from
Yeah.
being in the art circuit. So he's, it's just one of the many amazing things he does. But that's really it. And I think, it's not an easy material to work with at all. It's harder than steel. So most of the tools that we use as jewelers, like saws, are made of steel, and they're useless with the cobalt chrome. So we're working with diamond coated burrs and that sort of thing. And, every so often I ask myself, why am I doing this? Why am I making my life so hard? The special casting, it needs its own investment. It's a tricky material, but then I also think, thank God I did choose it, because when I started, no one was doing black jewelry. And in fact, at my very first show in 2000, I brought the jewelry with the black in it, but I almost didn't even put it out because I thought,
Interesting.
who's going to buy it? This is expensive and it's got black in it. Fortunately, I did, and it was at a craft show and people loved it, and the rest is history, so to speak. But had I not chosen this really difficult material, now I'd just be one of many who work with oxidized silver, which is a
Right.
beautiful look too, but completely, in my opinion, different.
Yes, very, very different.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice, like these series of sort of accidents made it so that I've got this thing that's so unique and so difficult that no one else wants to do it or can figure out how to do it. So, I think that it's worked out well.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about your design style, because I know a lot of your pieces are inspired by things in nature and things like that. So what goes into your designs, and talk us through a design from kind of start to finish.
Well, so, I think the biggest element of my design is because I use this cobalt chrome. I'm always looking for a way to showcase the contrast of the gold and the cobalt chrome. So, um, some of my pieces I will make in solid gold, and people desire them because there's another element of design which I'll talk about. But I'm first and foremost, the design needs to sort of lend itself to this combination of materials. But you're right, most of my inspiration is very sort of organic and inspired by nature. Um, Ideally non-literal, like it's not flowers or
Right.
leaves, which isn't to say it's not a part of a leaf or like a microscopic part of a flower, but I love texture, and the texture is also super important because no oxidation is permanent. And so by having a lot of texture on something that gets a lot of wear and tear, like a ring, the black may soften off the raised surfaces, but it's going to stay nice and dark in the crevices. And so that's an important part to keep that dark black look. But yeah, in fact, I have a couple, like this, for example, I don't know if it's in focus, but this
Yeah.
is some decayed wood that I found on an avocado ranch in Southern California. And from this, we made my shadow collection, which, let's see if I can find the ring. So this is the ring that is inspired or actually came
Okay.
directly from that. So it's kind of got a lacy look, and I can't tell if that's in focus
Yeah.
or
No,
not.
you're good. You're good.
Um, so yeah, I've done a lot where we just like find really cool materials, jacaranda pods I've cast from driftwood that I found on Manzanita Beach in Oregon. We did a whole rattlesnake grass collection, which rattlesnake grass is the name of a sort of weed that grows wild in Northern California,
Okay.
and it looks like the rattle of a rattlesnake. And and I've had friends who will send me. I get like boxes of cool material, see if it'll inspire me. Um, and then more recently, I've always loved that organic nature, but that's not all I like. I like clean. I think some of the like German jewelry that's a lot cleaner is really fascinating to me. I think I would let myself get very pigeonholed, like not by other people, but myself. Like if something was successful, I can't stray out of that,
Okay.
and I don't think I gave my collectors enough credit that was fine. It was, I don't know. I imposed on myself that I couldn't break out of this organic um, design box that I'd put myself in. But lately, as you get older and you realize like what matters and what doesn't matter, and people don't care as much as you care, I've done a lot more sort of clean lined things. I mean, everything still has the texture, but so I would say it runs the gamut. I do a ton of restyling as well, and so some of the cleaner pieces have really helped people envision what a piece could look like with their own stones. So yeah, so I have this book, excuse me, that has provided a lot of inspiration. So this guy, Ernst, whoops, it's upside down. Ernst Henkel, he did scientific drawings based on Darwin's findings. So,
Oh,
before they could do
interesting.
all the photography. This book is, I feel like if I had to be locked in a room and make jewelry for the rest of my life and have
Yeah.
to choose one item for inspiration, this would be fine. It's just got endless inspiration in it. It's such a beautiful book and the drawings are amazing. So this has been a huge source of inspiration for me as well. So I would say
Okay.
there's a lot that goes, it's the material. It's not, I always say there's two things that distinguish my jewelry. It's the materials, the cobalt chrome, and the organic or textured, highly textured design.
Okay. So one thing that we keep getting a lot of questions about that I think you would be a good person to go to is the whole idea of a lab created diamond. A lot of your work has diamonds, and lab created diamonds are, a newer thing
Mm-hmm.
on the market. What is your thoughts on lab versus real?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on
Okay.
that, and I'm kind of enjoying watching. I feel like I'm watching history in the making, and who knows where it's going to end up. But the concept has really sort of shifted and shaken up the industry. Before I get into it, I will point out that there was a time where the only pearl you could find was one that someone dove down to the bottom of the ocean to get, and now they're being farmed. And unless you're a real pearl connoisseur, it's not even really spoken about. It's just kind of assumed that most of the pearls you're ever going to buy are cultured,
Yep.
which is farmed. And while that's it's not an apples to apples comparison to how diamonds are made, I do think there is a fair comparison. I call myself a metalsmith, and that's where my love lies, and that's where I think that my designs shine is in the metalwork. That said, like putting a 1 carat diamond next to this oxidized cobalt chrome is just so cool.
Yes.
Um, but that's a big investment in a natural diamond. And once you put that $5,000 or $10,000 into one piece, it's just a lot of money to tie up into one piece. So in the advent of lab grown diamonds has helped me expand my designs. But to me, what's most interesting is a conversation about value, because I hear a lot people say, well, there's no trade-in value. They don't hold their value. And, if I'm being honest, I'll just say it like this. If you buy, if you're looking at a $10,000 natural diamond or a $5,000 lab grown diamond, you're not going to be able to turn that $10,000 diamond around and sell it for $10,000. There's just like anything that you buy, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's who knows in the future. As of now, diamonds aren't necessarily going up in value. Who knows though in the future? I mean, look at gold.
I
Gold's
know.
crazy expensive right now. But had you put if you just got a lab diamond and put that extra $5,000 into the let's say stock market, although maybe that's not a good example week either, but generally speaking, from an investment standpoint, I think it's a tough argument to be made that that you're going to make more money, or that it's going to hold its value better than a lab grown diamond. So it's true, lab grown diamond doesn't have the value, but you're also not spending the money on it.
Yeah.
I personally love it because, like, I would have never made this ring for myself, and now I have a nice 1.5 carat diamond ring, and it's just not something I've really ever cared about that much to spend the money on. But once it became attainable financially, it was like, yeah, I want a big
Yeah.
diamond ring. And so, and just in case any of your listeners aren't aware, they are physically the same as a diamond. They're just, the origin is different.
All right. So when you're not in the studio designing and creating, what are you out there doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Um, well, I'm out there coming and doing trunk shows like I've been doing this weekend. I mean, I probably travel at least a dozen times a year to different stores. But I think your question is, what do I do when I'm not working?
Yes. Yes.
I live in Aspen, so in the wintertime we ski a lot. And I do have a 14-year-old, so, I'm doing that. And all that comes with that. I we like, I love where I live. It's beautiful, but it's very small. And so sometimes we go a little stir crazy. I miss, I'm from San Francisco, where we had a lot of great restaurants and culture. So we spend most of our summers up in Montreal, which allows us, it's sort of an easy way to feel like we're in a, European country, because you've got the French. And it's so beautiful and old, and it has just the most amazing food and culture, and festivals, and there's a tennis tournament. So, we get our fix of city life up there, and I really look forward to that and enjoy that. And then my personal hobbies are, I read a lot. I love reading and writing a little bit. And to sort of keep myself busy if I ever have any downtime at work, and to keep myself from like reading the news too much, I try to learn new things all the time, and and in things that keep me engaged and interested, but also contribute to the business. So photography, videography, technology, I just find, that all those things are super helpful. And sometimes I'll get interested in something and I'm not quite sure how it's going to fit in with the business. And in fact, almost all of my jewelry now is designed, at least in part, in CAD, computer aided design.
Okay.
And when I started doing that, for years I rejected it, because I thought, how it doesn't tend to lend itself, or so I thought, to organic design. But it really, like most things in life, we think we know, no, that's not going to work for me. But I went for it, and now, it really does comprise most of my design. So, I keep trying to educate myself, um, in most of it is technology, whether it's, social media and photography, or, new CAD, or new, new toys that work with the technology, new 3D printers, that sort of thing. So that's what I really enjoy, is just learning new things all the time.
All right. Well, one more question before I let you go that we've been asking everybody. Why is Made in America important to you, and why do you think it should be important to, the public?
Well, I think that, I mean, I'm not someone who promotes the buying something just for the sake of buying something. Like, I mean, I think I appreciate good intention, and supporting someone because it's, feels like the right thing to do. But I don't know that that's like a long-term sustainable model.
Mhm.
So I try to instead think about why Made in America actually benefits me. Because let's just assume we're all sort of working from a selfish standpoint. And I know where I live, it's so small and so expensive for sort of regular people to live. And so I personally, we sometimes have to, don't have a choice but to buy from Amazon, because you just can't get stuff here. And I don't I think the quality is better. And also, I actually really love service. Like, I want to walk in somewhere and say, I want this, and the person to say, "Oh, I remember you liked that, and this is the one that I
Right.
recommend." So that is selfishly something that I really like. Like, my pharmacist knows my name and will come up and say, "Oh, we got this in, and I think it's better, and it's cheaper, and it's, you know." So that's like a real benefit to me. Financially, it's a benefit. Convenience wise, it's a benefit. I don't have to drive all over the place. I can drive like less than 5 miles. That would be my ideal, is to get everything sort of close by, and that I have sort of a partner who's going to help me make those decisions. Now, if I don't buy local, that's not going to exist. So it's in my best interest to support that.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say, more specifically to art and, craft, having lived in San Francisco, I lived there from like I want to say like 2007. I mean, I grew up around there, but we moved around, and I moved back as an adult in 2006 or 7, um, and had a studio in this sort of old American canning building down in the dog patch. And it was full of artists, and it was relatively affordable. And what happened there is just like what's happened all over the city, that artists can't afford to be there anymore. And so if they're not there, then their art's not there, and then the gallery openings aren't there, and then you're not meeting the people at the openings that are like-minded, and so you just lose the culture that you like. And I think it's one of the things I like about Montreal is it's still very, very affordable, and so you meet just regular creative people who can afford to live close to where they work, and they can afford to spend time off, creating, following their dreams or their creative pursuits, and that makes me, I like that. So I would rather live in a creative, artistic world than a more clean corporate world. So all those things make me want to spend my money on the things that I want to continue to exist.
That makes sense. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. And just a reminder to everyone, Sarah is going to be with us this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. That is April 5th and 6th. So please, please come on down and see her work. Her work is incredible. If you haven't seen it in person yet, you need to come by and check it out. And if you have any of your own stones, Sarah also does amazing jobs at designing beautiful one-of-a-kind pieces for you with your stones. So that would be a good opportunity to come down and chat with her about some project ideas too. And if you have any questions for her, bring them. Bring them. She's an amazing person to talk to. So you definitely won't regret coming down and chatting with her. So thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was so great getting to talk with you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you this weekend in person at the gallery. I thought it was really cool how Sarah kind of got started in a pawn shop, which I never even thought of as a way to learn about jewelry, and how she, started seeing different designs come through and just stumbled upon ideas and really created her own brand. So definitely come out and check out Sarah's work. We have so much going on at the gallery this weekend. We also have another Meet the Artist, Visiting Artist event with Megan Patrice Riley, who is another jeweler. She works all in the nylon coated stainless steel wires and gold and silver. She's got some citrine, some tourmaline, labradorite, all kinds of different stones. Really big, fun, super lightweight to wear. It's really good travel jewelry. So Megan will be here in the gallery this weekend as well. Again, that is on April 5th and 6th. She will be here during the day, both days, as well as Sarah. And we also, just as a reminder, have our Ayala Bar trunk show set up right now. I'm actually wearing one of her pieces right now that I saw when it came in and kind of snagged it. It caught my eye right away. But we have some really cool pieces from Ayala Bar, so definitely come check that out. And there's a lot going on this weekend. Also downtown this weekend is the Mainsail Art Show, which is just a few blocks away. So just make it an art-filled day. Come, check out Mainsail in the morning before it gets too hot, and then walk over to the gallery, get some air conditioning, cool down, meet Sarah, meet Megan, check out Ayala's work. There is so much going on. So again, I just want to thank you guys all for listening. Again, we are SHAPIRO'S, rooted in American craft. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Give us a follow on socials. We're having fun doing this. I'm sorry Matt wasn't here. He usually has way more side chatter than I do, but that's all right. Hopefully he'll be back next week, and we will see you guys soon. Have a good one.